1976 to 1983, Tuesday nights meant spending time with Laverne and Shirley, two best friends working as bottle cappers at a Milwaukee brewery. The show broke ground with its physical comedy and became one of the most watched programs in America. But behind those basement apartment walls and that famous hopscotch chant, some truly bizarre things were happening on set. Here are the weird things that happened on the set of Laverne and Shirley. Number 22. The final episode was a backdoor pilot.
As long as the party's breaking up, what do you say that we go back to my place?
The final episode of Laverne and Shirley, titled Here Today, Hair Tomorrow, was actually designed as a backdoor pilot for a potential spin-off series focusing on Carmine Ragusa, the character played by Eddie Mecca, who had been Shirley's on-again, off-again boyfriend throughout the series. In this episode, Carmine moves to New York City to audition for the Broadway musical Hair, which was perfect timing since Hair had become a massive cultural phenomenon. The episode shows him starting his new life in the big city, meeting new people including a new roommate named Rick West played by Ben Powers, and pursuing his dreams of theatrical stardom. Laverne appears only at the beginning and end of the episode, bookending Carmine's story with brief scenes that provided continuity with the original show. The idea was to test audience reaction and gauge whether viewers would be interested in following Carmine's adventures in New York without Laverne and Shirley. It would have been a show about a dancer and singer trying to make it big on Broadway, filled with theatrical references and New York City scenery. However, ABC wasn't interested in developing another show from the Laverne and Shirley universe, especially given how the original series had struggled in its final seasons. The network felt the franchise had run its course, so Carmine's Broadway dreams remained just a dream, confined to that single episode. The final episode of Laverne and Shirley ended up being the last we saw of any of these characters we'd followed for 8 years. It was a strange, bittersweet ending to a show that had once been the #1 program on television, watched by more Americans than any other show on the air. Number 21. Penny Marshall wanted to film in New York.
True, I can't believe it. For less than $300, you and I are flying to a tropical paradise.
Despite Cindy Williams' departure, Laverne and Shirley actually maintained decent ratings. The show ranked at number 25 for the 1982 to 83 season, even without Shirley Feeney, which was respectable for an aging sitcom. ABC executives saw potential for at least one more season and wanted Penny Marshall to return for a 9th year to keep the show going. Marshall was willing to continue, but she had one very specific condition that she refused to negotiate on. She wanted to move the entire production from Los Angeles to New York. Marshall had grown tired of Los Angeles after years of filming there, and she wanted to work on the East Coast, where she felt more comfortable and connected to her roots. For Marshall, it wasn't just a whim. She was serious about making this geographical move happen. However, when ABC executives sat down and calculated the enormous cost of relocating an entire television production across the country, they quickly realized it wasn't financially feasible. Moving sets, equipment, crew, and establishing new production facilities in New York would have cost a fortune. Given the show's age, the fact that it was now missing half of its title duo, and the uncertain return on such a massive investment, ABC made the decision to quietly cancel Laverne and Shirley in May 1983 after 178 episodes. If Marshall had been willing to keep filming in Los Angeles, there's a very good chance the show would have continued for at least one more season, possibly giving it a better send-off than the awkward ending it received. Number 20. Cindy Williams left after a lawsuit over pregnancy.
Say, Carmine, Laverne has something she wants to tell you.
Shirley can't do this to me! Not now!
In 1982, Cindy Williams became pregnant with her first child. The show was going into its 8th season, and Williams' pregnancy couldn't be hidden. According to Williams, Paramount had initially assured her they would write the pregnancy into the series and work around her schedule. The studio had done this for other pregnant actresses on other shows, so it seemed reasonable. But then the studio changed its mind and refused to accommodate her pregnancy. When Williams and her husband and manager at the time, Bill Hudson of the Hudson Brothers, asked for reasons reasonable accommodations, Paramount not only refused, but demanded that Williams work on her scheduled due date. Hudson pressed Paramount with a list of demands to protect his wife and their unborn child, but the studio stood firm. Williams was faced with an impossible choice: risk her health and her baby, or walk away from the show that had made her famous. 2 episodes into production of season 8, in August 1982, Williams made her decision. She walked off the set and filed a $20 million lawsuit against Paramount. The case was eventually settled out of court, and Williams was released from her contract. From that point forward, Laverne and Shirley continued without Shirley. The show tried to explain her absence by saying she'd married Walter Meany and moved away. It was a shocking turn for a show literally built on the friendship between its 2 title characters, and it left a bitter taste for many fans who'd followed the girls' adventures for 6 years. Number 19. The theme song became a top 30 hit.
Lamp.
The Laverne and Shirley theme song wasn't just memorable, it actually became a legitimate radio hit. Cindy Greco's recording of Making Our Dreams Come True was released as a single in 1976 and climbed into the top 30 on the American music charts. The song became so popular that radio stations played it regularly, not just as a TV theme, but as an actual pop song. The success was so overwhelming that Marshall and Williams themselves recorded an entire album in 1976 called Laverne and Shirley Sing. The album featured original songs along with covers of 1950s and 1960s standards, all performed in character. In November 1976, the 2 actresses appeared on a float during the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and sang one of the album's songs, a cover of the Crystals' hit. The album is still available today and remains a quirky piece of television history, a reminder of just how huge the show was at its peak. Number 18, the show moved to California for budget reasons.
This is ridiculous. I cannot continue with all this meaningless female babble going on. I'm sorry.
In the 6th season, Laverne and Shirley underwent a massive change. The entire show relocated from Milwaukee, Wisconsin to Burbank, California. The storyline explanation was that the characters wanted new opportunities and adventures in California. But the real reason had nothing to do with the plot. The show's ratings had been declining, and the move to California was a desperate attempt to shake things up and attract viewers. It also allowed for cheaper filming since California locations were easier and less expensive to recreate than Milwaukee settings. The timeline jumped ahead as well, moving from the late 1950s/early 1960s to the mid-1960s. 2 new characters were added: Sonny St. Jacques, a stuntman who became Laverne's landlord and love interest, played by Ed Marinaro, and Rhonda Lee, an aspiring actress who became the girl's neighbor, played by Leslie Easterbrook. The new California opening credits even showed the girls kissing a poster of the Beatles from 1964, cementing the time period shift. Despite these changes and the injection of fresh characters and settings, the ratings never fully recovered to their earlier heights when the show had been the #1 program in America. Number 17, they showed up to an awards show in rehearsal clothes.
Look, Squiggy, if you want to stay, sit down and shut up. If not, get out of here.
I don't want to stay. I don't want to
Sit down.
In 1977, Marshall and Williams were invited to present an award at the People's Choice Awards. Initially, they said no, because the ceremony fell on a Laverne and Shirley rehearsal night, and they didn't want to miss work. The awards show producers really wanted them to appear, so they made them an offer they couldn't refuse. They told the actresses they wouldn't have to dress up or worry about getting fancy. Marshall and Williams took them at their word. When the 1977 People's Choice Awards broadcast aired, viewers saw Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams walk onto the stage in their actual rehearsal outfits, sweatshirts, jeans, and sneakers, to present the favorite television comedy program award to Happy Days stars Henry Winkler and Ron Howard. It was a bizarre sight on an otherwise glamorous awards show, with everyone else in evening gowns and tuxedos, while Laverne and Shirley looked like they'd just walked off a basketball court. But it perfectly captured the casual, working-class spirit of their characters and became a memorable television moment. Number 16. Steven Spielberg got jealous of a hurricane scene.
Get out! Get out! It's locked! We're locked in! Where's the key? They're over there!
Penny Marshall and Steven Spielberg were friends, and Marshall had a small role in Spielberg's 1979 film 1941, During filming, Marshall stayed on set simply out of fascination with watching Spielberg direct. In return, Spielberg came to support Marshall during the filming of Laverne and Shirley's 100th episode, called Not Quite South of the Border. In this episode, Laverne and Shirley go on a vacation near Mexico, where everything goes wrong. They check into a bungalow that's missing 2 walls, their luggage gets lost, and then a hurricane hits. The hurricane scene featured elaborate physical comedy with the girls being blown around by wind machines, props flying everywhere, and general chaos. It was one of the funniest and most ambitious sequences the show ever attempted. Spielberg watched the filming and was genuinely impressed. In fact, according to Penny Marshall's memoir, he actually became jealous of how well the scene turned out. The physical comedy was so expertly executed that even one of Hollywood's greatest directors found himself wishing he'd thought of it first. It became one of the most iconic episodes of the series and demonstrated just how good Marshall and Williams were at physical comedy. Number 15. The mothers of both stars appeared on the show. In a talent show episode, both Penny Marshall's mother and Cindy Williams' mother made appearances on screen. This was a sweet gesture and a fun inside joke for viewers who knew to look for them. But the Marshall family involvement didn't stop there. A portrait of Penny Marshall's father was used as the portrait of Mr. Schatz that hung at the brewery during the Milwaukee years. Anytime you saw a painting of the brewery owner on the wall, you were actually looking at Penny's dad. The show truly was a Marshall family affair. Gary Marshall created, produced, directed, and wrote for the show. Penny acted and later directed episodes. Their sister Ronnie Hallen was the casting director, and their father Anthony Marshall was also a producer. Even Penny's ex-husband Rob Reiner was involved early on, since his enthusiasm for Lenny and Squiggy helped get those characters on the show in the first place. Number 14. Cindy Williams and David Lander dated during the show.
Final offer. 200. That's our final offer.
There is no G.
While Laverne and Squiggy never had any romantic storyline on the show, behind the scenes, something surprising was happening. Cindy Williams, who played Shirley, and David Lander, who played the socially awkward Squiggy, actually dated for about a year during the series production. This was kept pretty quiet at the time, and most fans had no idea it was happening. It's particularly ironic, given that Squiggy was written as someone women generally found repulsive, with his greasy hair, weird voice, and creepy behavior, but Lander himself was apparently quite charming off-camera. The relationship eventually ended, and both moved on. Williams would later marry Bill Hudson of the Hudson Brothers, while Lander remained with his wife. But for that 1 year during the show's run, Shirley Feeney and Squiggy were an actual couple when the cameras weren't rolling. Number 13. The characters were Revirginized from Happy Days.
This is Laverne DeFazio, she's mine. And this is Shirley Feeney, she's yours, as you can see.
When Laverne and Shirley first appeared on the Happy Days episode A Date with Fonzie in November 1975, they were portrayed very differently than they would be on their own show. Gary Marshall specifically described them to Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams as fast girls, girls who put out. They were meant to be older, more experienced, more aggressive women, the kind who would be in Fonzie's Little Black Book. They came from the wrong side of the tracks and had a reputation around Milwaukee. However, when the spin-off show went into development, network executives insisted the characters be toned way down for family hour viewing. The girls needed to be more innocent, more naive, more appropriate for children to watch. Cindy Williams later said that this change actually gave the characters more depth and made them more relatable. Penny Marshall put it more bluntly: they were re-virginized. The Laverne and Shirley who appeared on their own show starting in January 1976 were much sweeter, more wholesome versions of the characters who had appeared on Happy Days just 2 months earlier. Number 12. ABC almost made a Lenny and Squiggy spinoff.
Just like something out of Jules Verne.
Okay, Laverne.
During the first season of Laverne and Shirley, Lenny and Squiggy proved to be breakout characters. They were so popular that ABC president Fred Silverman asked Gary Marshall to develop a spin-off show specifically for the duo. Marshall came up with Lenny and Squiggy in the Army, which was exactly what it sounds like, the two characters joining the military and having adventures. Paramount Television liked the concept and produced a pilot episode. However, when ABC executives actually watched the pilot, they decided they didn't like it after all and dropped the entire idea. The show never made it to air, but ABC didn't completely give up on the military angle. 5 years later, in 1981, they brought the idea back as a Saturday morning cartoon called Laverne and Shirley in the Army. This animated version featured Laverne, Shirley, Lenny, and Squiggy all joining the Army, along with a talking piglet drill sergeant named Squealy. Penny Marshall and Cindy Williams voiced their characters, though Michael McKean and David Lander weren't involved in the cartoon. Number 11. The original Lenny and Squiggy act was too vulgar for TV.
What is this, the Christian Science reading room?
We're looking for an apartment we can share.
Yeah.
While Lenny and Squiggy became beloved family-friendly characters on Laverne and Shirley, their original incarnation from McKean and Lander's comedy troupe days was absolutely filthy. The act was so loaded with profanity and adult humor that it was completely unsuitable for television. When they brought the characters to Laverne and Shirley, McKean and Lander had to completely clean up their act and tone down the jokes to meet network standards. The weird voices and awkward physical comedy stayed, but all the dirty material had to go. It was such a dramatic transformation that anyone who had seen the original Lenny and Anthony act wouldn't even recognize it as the same characters. The cleaned-up television versions were like distant, well-behaved cousins of the raunchy originals. But the sanitized version worked. Lenny and Squiggy became so popular that ABC initially wanted to give them their own spin-off show. Number 10. Lenny and Squiggy were created at Carnegie Mellon.
Always available. We parties, weddings.
Baby showers.
Yep.
Don't even shower an adult if there's money in it.
Michael McKean and David Lander didn't create their famous characters for Laverne and Shirley. They'd been performing as Lenny and Squiggy, or rather, Lenny and Anthony, as Squiggy was originally called, since they were theater students together at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh in the mid-1960s. The characters were part of their act with a comedy troupe called The Credibility Gap, which also included Harry Shearer. Rob Reiner, who was married to Penny Marshall at the time, was a huge fan of the characters and asked McKean and Lander to perform them at a party. Penny Marshall was at that party and immediately saw potential in these weird, greaser-looking characters with their strange voices and awkward energy. When Laverne and Shirley was being developed, she insisted they bring in Lenny and Squiggy as recurring characters. The roles made McKean and Lander household names, even though they'd been performing these characters for over a decade before the show premiered. Number 9. The L on Laverne's shirt had a practical purpose.
Well, Laverne, I'm fed up, Laverne. I can't take anymore. I can't do another stupid sing a telegram. I can't do another dumb...
Everyone remembers Laverne's signature style, that cursive L monogrammed on practically everything she wore. It became such an iconic part of the character that merchandise featuring that distinctive L sold like crazy. But Penny Marshall didn't choose this detail purely for character development. She had a very practical reason for insisting on it. When you're a relatively unknown actress starting out on a new television show, one of the biggest challenges is making sure audiences remember your character's name. Marshall knew that having that big L prominently displayed on her chest in every scene would serve as a constant visual reminder to viewers. They'd see the L and think L for Laverne. It was brilliant branding before anyone called it that. The monogram helped cement the character's name in viewers' minds and gave Laverne a distinctive visual signature that set her apart. Of course, it also spawned thousands of copycat L sweaters and jackets sold to fans who wanted to dress like Laverne DeFazio. Number 8, Milk and Pepsi, was a real thing from Penny's childhood. Laverne's bizarre signature drink, milk mixed with Pepsi, wasn't something the writers invented to make her character quirky. This was another detail pulled straight from Penny Marshall's real childhood. Marshall's mother was strict about making her drink milk, especially at home. But when Penny went to Jewish summer camp, they couldn't serve milk with meat meals because of kosher dietary laws, so they served Pepsi instead. Penny loved Pepsi and wanted it at home too, but her mother insisted she drink her milk first. Sometimes her mother would finally allow her to have a Pepsi, but she'd pour it into the same glass without rinsing out the milk first. The result was milk mixed with Pepsi, which Penny actually grew to enjoy. When she needed to give Laverne a memorable quirk, she remembered that strange childhood drink and gave it to her character. It became one of Laverne's most recognizable traits, and yes, it apparently does taste better than it sounds. Number 7, the opening chant, came from Penny Marshall's childhood.
Oh, it's a real ball.
It's a real ball. Lenny, those are rubber grapes.
That famous opening sequence where Laverne and Shirley skip down the street chanting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Hasenpfeffer Incorporated wasn't written by a comedy team or marketing department. It was something Penny Marshall and her friends actually used to chant while skipping to school as children. It's a Yiddish-American hopscotch rhyme that Marshall remembered from her childhood in the Bronx. Schlemiel means an inept person who causes harm, and Schlemazel means an unlucky person who has bad things happen to them. There's an old joke: a Schlemiel spills soup, a Schlemazel gets soup spilled on them. Hasenpfeffer is a German rabbit stew. Incorporated was just added because it sounded funny. Marshall suggested using this childhood chant for the opening credits, and it became one of the most memorable theme song intros in television history, even though most viewers had no idea what the words actually meant. Number 6. Cindy Williams couldn't do a Wisconsin accent.
Lights! Camera! Shut up!
Cindy Williams was from California, and when she signed on to play a girl from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, she figured she'd better learn the accent. She worked hard trying to nail that Midwestern sound, but nothing she did seemed right. Every attempt came out sounding like a New York accent instead of Wisconsin. She practiced and practiced, but it just wasn't working. In interviews years later, Williams admitted she still won't watch the early episodes of the show because her accent attempts were so embarrassing. Finally, creator Gary Marshall pulled her aside and told her to just forget about the accent entirely. They'd make it work without it. Williams was relieved, and Shirley Feeney went forward sounding exactly like Cindy Williams from California. Nobody seemed to notice or care that she didn't sound particularly Midwestern. The character worked regardless, and eventually the whole show moved to California anyway, making the accent issue completely moot. Number 5. Gary Marshall banned his own children from the set.
Oh, you'd better close that window. It's going to rain.
Most producers and directors love having their kids visit them at work, and Gary Marshall was no exception, except when it came to Laverne and Shirley. Despite being the show's creator and executive producer, and despite his sister Penny being the star, Marshall absolutely refused to let his children visit the set. The reason was simple: the language and behavior backstage were so foul that he didn't want his kids exposed to it. Between takes, the cast would swear constantly, throw tantrums, hurl scripts across the room, and generally behave in ways that weren't suitable for children. Marshall's kids begged him to visit the Laverne and Shirley set like they could visit his other shows, but he held firm. The environment was just too volatile and inappropriate. According to David Lander, who played Squiggy, the show went through 12 different writing staffs during its run, with about 12 people per staff. That's roughly 144 writers who passed through the show's doors, many of them driven away by the chaos and constant script rejections from the temperamental stars. Number 4. The Happy Days cast listened through the walls.
Okay, freeze! Assume the position.
The what?
The position, the position. Assume it, assume it. Make it.
Laverne and Shirley filmed right next door to Happy Days on the Paramount lot, and the Happy Days cast and crew quickly learned that their neighbors were having a rough time. The fighting on the Laverne and Shirley set was so loud and so frequent that people working on Happy Days would actually press drinking glasses against the wall to hear the arguments better. Ron Howard, Aaron Moran, and other Happy Days cast members have talked openly about the vicious screaming matches they could hear coming through the walls. There were arguments about who got more lines, disputes over script changes, and general temperamental behavior that made the set next door seem like a war zone. The Happy Days set was known for being friendly and relaxed, so the contrast was striking. Some days the shouting got so loud that Happy Days would have to stop their own filming until things quieted down next door. Number 3. Michael Eisner hid a pilot episode in a closet.
Sit down. Don't get yourselves in an uproar. Not yet, huh?
When Cindy Williams initially refused to play Shirley Feeney, the producers frantically recast the role with an actress named Liberty Williams, no relation to Cindy. They filmed a 7-minute screen test with Liberty and Penny Marshall, and it was ready to be shown to executives. However, between that afternoon shoot and the evening, Cindy Williams was talked into accepting the role after all. She refilmed the same scene that night with Penny Marshall. When it came time for the network screening, executives wanted to compare both versions to decide which Shirley worked better, but Michael Eisner Eisner, who was a Paramount executive at the time, long before becoming CEO of Disney, was absolutely convinced that Cindy Williams was the right choice. He didn't want to risk Liberty Williams getting picked, so he hid the first reel of film in a closet and told everyone at the screening that the afternoon footage had mysteriously gotten lost. Only the version with Cindy Williams was screened, and that settled it. That hidden reel still exists somewhere in a vault, but it never aired. Number 2. Scripts were stolen from a failed sitcom.
Say, you got any spare nail polish remover? Those manicures up there are going crazy.
Gary Marshall didn't just recycle sets, he recycled entire storylines. Virtually all of the scripts from an unsuccessful 1966 sitcom called Hey, Landlord were rewritten and repurposed for Laverne and Shirley episodes. Hey, Landlord had lasted only 2 short seasons and told the story of a guy who inherits an apartment in New York and shares it with a comedian. The show bombed, but Marshall saw potential in those unused scripts. He had his writers dust them off, change the characters from 2 men to 2 women, relocate the action from New York to Milwaukee, and suddenly they had fresh Laverne and Shirley episodes. One, Hey, Landlord episode called Testing 1-2 was recycled not only as a Laverne and Shirley episode called Guinea Pigs, but also as an episode of another show called Getting Together. Marshall wasn't about to let good comedy go to waste just because it had failed the first time around. Number 1. The set was literally recycled from another show.
Squiggy says he got it from his uncle's wax museum.
Girls, you are in big trouble.
Oh, we didn't know those things stole.
When Paramount needed to get Laverne and Shirley up and running quickly in 1976, they took a very practical approach to building the girls' basement apartment. They simply redecorated the apartment set that had just been vacated by Oscar Madison and Felix Unger from The Odd Couple, which had wrapped in 1975. The same walls, the same floor plan, just different furniture and paint. Ironically, Penny Marshall had actually appeared on The Odd Couple playing Oscar's secretary Myrna Turner, so she was already familiar with the space. The producers saw no point in building something from scratch when they had a perfectly good apartment set sitting empty. They just gave it a fresh coat of paint, moved in some different furniture, and suddenly it was a Milwaukee basement apartment instead of a New York bachelor pad. This wasn't the only recycling happening behind the scenes either. Laverne and Shirley gave us 8 seasons of laughter, friendship, and unforgettable physical comedy. But behind those basement apartment walls and that iconic hopscotch chant, the reality was far more complicated than anyone watching at home could have guessed. From recycled sets to hidden pilot episodes, from vicious fights to unexpected romances, from Steven Spielberg's jealousy to pregnancy lawsuits, the show was filled with moments as strange as any sitcom plot. These weren't just 2 bottle cappers making their dreams come true. These were real people dealing with real chaos while creating television history. If you enjoyed these behind-the-scenes stories, please like and subscribe for more nostalgic looks at classic television. Thanks for watching.